And if the tool was used often, something even better formed: a patina. Not the flaky orange rust you see on neglected steel, but a dense black layer of magnetite that sealed the metal from moisture. The more the tool was used, the stronger that layer became. The oil from hands, the friction of work, the warmth of the forge, all helped the iron maintain its strength. It's ironic, isn't it? The very things we replaced with machines, touch, heat, care, were what made the tools last. So why not bring that back? Why not make iron the old way again? The truth is, we can't, not at scale. A bloomery furnace at its peak could make maybe 50 pounds of usable iron in a day. A modern blast furnace makes thousands of tons. That scale is what powers cities, builds skyscrapers, fuels economies. We traded craftsmanship for capacity, but what we lost in the trade was soul. You can't mass-produce soul. Still, hidden in those old methods is a kind of wisdom that refuses to die. Medieval smiths used what they had: fire, air, water, and time, and from those four elements, they built miracles. They learned that layering soft iron with harder steel could create tools that were both flexible and unbreakable. They called it pattern welding, twisting and folding bars of different metals together until they fused into one. Under light, the surface shimmered like rippling water. Those waves weren't just decoration. They marked boundaries where slag and steel intertwined, creating microscopic defenses against rust. Each line in the pattern was history folded into the metal, a fingerprint of its creation. Even their so-called superstitions carried hidden truth. Old texts describe quenching blades in strange mixtures: urine, herbs, blood, even honey. For centuries, historians laughed it off as medieval nonsense. But modern metallurgy later confirmed that salt, ammonia, and organic compounds actually change how metal cools. Urine, for example, prevents the steam envelope that slows down quenching in water, allowing the steel to harden faster and more evenly. The smiths didn't know the chemistry, but they knew the results. They spoke in symbols because they didn't yet have the words. And yet, their instincts guided them to real science centuries before the textbooks caught up. It's easy to dismiss them as primitive, to look at their simple furnaces and rough tools and assume ignorance. But every swing of the hammer, every hiss of quenching metal, was an experiment. They watched, learned, refined, and passed those secrets down not in manuals, but through mentorship. Apprenticeships that lasted 14 years or more. A master smith could read metal like we read screens. He could tell carbon content by the color of sparks, temperature by the hue of glowing steel, and structural balance by sound alone. That wasn't luck. That was experience, distilled into instinct. And here's the irony: modern metallurgy, for all its precision, still can't replicate the internal structure of bloomery iron. We can analyze it, measure it, even simulate it, but we can't truly make it the same way. Because the difference isn't just temperature or composition, it's chaos. The bloomery process was imperfect by nature. It created a mix of microstructures, soft and hard zones, slag fibers, and trace impurities, all locked together like veins in stone. It was that imperfection that gave the metal life, a self-healing complexity that resisted time itself. Every rusted garden tool, every corroded fence post, every cheap blade that breaks after one season, they're symptoms of the same disease, the worship of convenience. We've turned durability into nostalgia. We build things that are meant to be replaced, not remembered. But those who came before us didn't think that way. They didn't see a tool as a throwaway object. They saw it as an inheritance. That's why medieval iron still endures in cathedrals, bridges, and artifacts buried for centuries. Not because it was flawless, but because it was alive. Because the people who made it understood that strength isn't about purity, it's about balance. The slag we now discard as waste was their armor. The phosphorus we filter out was their protection. And the time we refused to spend was their secret ingredient. We didn't lose that knowledge through ignorance. We abandoned it by choice. We chose quantity over longevity, efficiency over endurance. And now, surrounded by rust and noise, we call it progress. But progress without memory is just repetition. So the next time you pick up a tool, think about the hands that once made theirs to last a lifetime. Think about the fire, the patience, the faith that went into every spark. Because that's what real craftsmanship is. It's time, captured in metal. If this opened your eyes to how much we've traded away in the name of convenience, hit that like button. It helps this knowledge reach others who've never thought about it this way. And before you go, tell me in the comments what other ancient technologies you want me to uncover next. We're just getting started digging into the forgotten brilliance of the past. Make sure you're subscribed to Prehistoric Medievals, because next time, we're exploring another mystery, the lost techniques that made ancient swords stronger than anything modern factories can produce. Until then, remember this. Every time you buy cheap, you're voting for rust. Buy once, care for it, and let it outlive you. Thanks for watching. In a quiet museum vault, beneath the dim hum of climate control, lies a relic that has outlasted empires, an iron axe head forged 8 centuries ago. Its surface is darkened with time, but beneath that charcoal skin, the metal remains solid, defiant. You could swing it today, and it would bite into wood as sharply as the day it was made. Now picture the axe hanging in your own shed, the one you bought just 2 years ago. Its steel head already spotted with orange freckles of rust. Give it another 5 years and you'll toss it out without a second thought. It's an everyday moment we never question. But it asks a strange and uncomfortable question. How could something hammered in a clay furnace outlive our precision-engineered tools by centuries? The answer isn't magic. It's chemistry, lost craftsmanship, and a quiet betrayal of knowledge we once held in our hands. Modern steel, the kind used in almost everything you own, is what metallurgists call mild steel. It's clean, efficient, predictable, around 0.25% carbon, almost no impurities. That purity is the problem. Medieval wrought iron, by contrast, was messy. It had only a trace of carbon, but it was laced with slag, tiny glassy threads formed during smelting, and touched by elements like phosphorus, remnants of the ore itself. To an ancient blacksmith, these impurities weren't flaws. They were part of the metal's soul. But to modern industry, they're obstacles. Things that slow down rolling mills, make welding harder, and lower factory output. So we stripped them out. We streamlined the process, made it faster, cleaner, cheaper, and in doing so, removed the very defenses that once made iron endure. When modern steel rusts, it does so aggressively. Moisture lands on its surface, oxygen reacts, and a bloom of red corrosion appears. That rust is porous. It holds more water, inviting more decay. The corrosion digs downward like roots breaking through soil, cutting into the grain boundaries of the metal until strength turns to powder. There's nothing to stop it. Medieval iron fought back differently. Those slag threads that we now call impurities acted like tiny barriers. When rust tried to advance, it hit a wall, literally. The corrosion would spread sideways along the glassy fibers instead of tunneling inward. The result was a stable surface layer, a dark patina that sealed itself off. It didn't crumble. It endured. If you're wondering how blacksmiths of the past stumbled upon such resilience without chemistry textbooks, the answer is simple. Time, repetition, and instinct. They observed what worked and what didn't, learned from the failures that cracked beneath their hammers, and passed down the subtle truths that science would later rediscover. Every tool, every blade, every hinge bore the fingerprints of that hard-earned understanding. But the story goes deeper than impurities. It begins in the earth itself. Across medieval Europe, iron wasn't mined from deep shafts, but gathered from the land. In marshes and bogs, nature quietly produced her own iron ore, forming reddish clumps just beneath the water. People could dig it with their hands. This bog iron, though humble, held a secret. It was rich in phosphorus. When smelted in small clay furnaces, that phosphorus didn't burn away. It joined the metal, and when the iron aged, slowly over decades, it reacted with oxygen to form a thin, crystalline film that sealed it from moisture. Rust couldn't get in. It was an accidental discovery that no one fully understood, yet they recognized its magic through results. A plow that didn't rot, a nail that stayed strong in damp timber, an axe that survived generations. One of the greatest surviving examples of this chemistry stands not in Europe, but in India. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, 6 tons of pure iron standing for more than 1,600 years, has barely rusted. For centuries, it baffled scientists. How could ancient metal resist the elements for so long? When analyzed, the answer echoed the same story. High phosphorus content and a slow formation of protective oxides. The same process that happened by accident in bog iron. Nature and time collaborated to create what modern refineries would later destroy. We think of progress as a straight line, that newer means better, that technology replaces craft. But the truth is, progress often chooses speed over substance. In the race to manufacture more, We forgot how to make things that last. When steel became an industry, purity became an obsession. We built blast furnaces that melt iron completely, skim off slag as waste, and refine the metal into uniform ingots. Efficient, yes, but sterile. You can't recreate the microscopic networks of glassy fibers inside liquid metal. You can't preserve the slow-grown resilience of phosphorus while chasing volume by the ton. So we gained control and lost character. The bloomery furnaces of the Middle Ages, crude as they seemed, worked differently. They never reached iron's melting point. Inside those waist-high chimneys of clay, charcoal, and ore were layered like a living thing, breathing under the pull of bellows. The flames rose to just the right threshold, hot enough to strip oxygen from ore, but not enough to liquefy the metal. The iron stayed solid, growing grain by grain, while molten slag dripped away beneath it. What emerged was a spongy, glowing mass called a bloom, half stone, half metal. The smith would drag it out with tongs, sparks leaping like fireflies, and begin to hammer. That was where real transformation began. Each strike compressed the bloom, forcing out trapped slag while aligning what remained into fine threads. The metal became fibrous, almost organic, and as it was reheated and hammered again, something invisible happened inside. Stresses evened out, carbon redistributed, and microscopic cracks sealed shut. The iron didn't just take shape, it evolved. By the time the smith quenched it and lifted the finished piece to the light, he wasn't holding a product. He was holding time itself, days of labor condensed into a tool that might outlive him. That was the secret ingredient: time. Today, a factory can stamp out an axe head in minutes. It looks identical to the ancient one in shape and shine, maybe even in weight, but it isn't the same. Because what we no longer invest in the forge, we pay for later in rust, in waste, in endless replacement. When a tool costs $15, you don't care if it dies in 2 years. When it costs a month's wages, you treat it like family. You oil it, sharpen it, hand it down. That difference between ownership and disposability is what truly separated medieval craftsmanship from modern convenience. So when we hold that old axe under museum glass, we're not just looking at metal. We're looking at an idea, the belief that a tool should last longer than the hands that made it. Somewhere along the way, we traded that belief for efficiency, and our world, filled with rust and replacements, shows the cost of that trade every single day. The longer you look at that old iron, the more you realize it wasn't just chemistry that made it last. It was philosophy, a worldview forged alongside the metal itself. When a blacksmith in the 13th century made an axe, he wasn't thinking about market demand or production quotas. He was thinking about survival. A broken tool meant no harvest, no firewood, no income. That fear shaped their craftsmanship as much as fire shaped their iron. Every blow of the hammer was a promise: this will not fail you. The economics of permanence were simple but brutal. A single axe might take 3 days of constant heating, hammering, and cooling. The craftsman's entire skill, built through years of apprenticeship, was poured into that one piece. And that effort gave it meaning. In medieval England, a good axe could cost a month's wages. A sword, half a year's. These weren't consumer goods. They were heirlooms. They were built to be repaired, not replaced. Families listed them in wills. Sons inherited their father's hammers. The tools that built their homes often outlived the hands that held them. Compare that to now. When something rusts, we throw it away. Not because we have to, but because we can. That shift didn't happen by accident. It was engineered. The moment mass production made replacement cheaper than repair, the entire logic of craftsmanship flipped. Factories were rewarded for speed, not longevity. And so we entered an age of planned obsolescence, where the faster something fails, the more profitable it becomes to sell another. What used to be a blacksmith's shame, making something that breaks, is now an industry standard. But medieval smiths didn't just rely on materials or skill. They knew their tools needed care, and they built rituals around it. After finishing a blade or tool, they performed what we'd now call seasoning. They heated the metal until it glowed dull red, then rubbed it with linseed oil or animal fat. The heat caused the oil to polymerize, forming a thin protective film bonded to the surface. It wasn't paint. It was a chemical shield. You can see the same process today when someone seasons a cast iron pan. It's the same principle, just forgotten by most. That single step gave medieval iron its second skin.